Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Bari al-Khilaika ajma'in wa salatu wa salam ala rasulihi wa habibihi Abul Qasim al-Mustafa Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad wa ala ahli bayti at-tayyibin at-tahirin al-ma'sumin wa la'natullahi a'daihim ajma'in min al-an ila yawmiddin. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brothers and sisters. That salam sounded like you guys are still fasting. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Whoa, yeah, that was good. Once again, I'm very, very pleased to be here. I feel I'm coming back here to family, really, after a while. It's even better that we are in a state of Ramadan, which is a happy time for most of us. I think most of the non-Muslims find it fascinating that Muslims are so joyous while we are fasting. You know, when you speak to them and they say, you're fasting for 30 days, you know, they expect you to be crawling on the ground and crying and stuff like that. But very interestingly, we are quite happy, and that's a very interesting sign because you know, there's a hadith where the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that the month of Ramadan, we are guests at Allah's banquet. And many of us don't think about it, but our souls rejoice, and that is why we are so happy. Our souls rejoice when you're invited to the banquet of a great king, a great ruler. It is a great honor to be there, and in the presence of that king of the cosmos, of the universe, we know that we are in a privileged situation because we know that we can get his air. We know that we are honored guests at that banquet. And I want to explore in these next 10 days the decorum that we should have at that banquet. I want us to meditate on how we should behave and what we should be concentrating on in order to be the notable guests at that banquet. And what is the purpose of Ramadan? And again, we remember that very beautiful verse in the Holy Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kutiba alaykum as-siyam kama kutiba ala alladhina min qablikum la'allakum tattaqun. That, O you who believe, fasting is prescribed for you as it has been prescribed for those before you in order for you to practice taqwa, in order for you to be of those who are the pious. And to be pious, what does it mean to be pious? You know, taqwa is a very interesting word. Indeed, the word pious is not the best word to translate taqwa, because in the Western idea, the word pious implies a passive position, you know, a state that a person has or doesn't have. But that state is something that is achieved by a dynamic type of attitude or behavior within the psyche. When we look at the human condition, we find that we are two-dimensional. We find that we are both physical with a body and spiritual with a soul. And the relationship between the two is not an equal relationship. In other words, the soul, or in other words, the intellect, must dominate the body. The body must not dominate the soul. So it's not an equal relationship. It is a hierarchical relationship. And that is seen in our relationship with our appetites, or what we have. The more we have, the more we indulge our appetites, it has an inverse relationship, by and large, to our spirituality. For the normal person, for the average person. In other words, the more you have, the more you consume, the more you will be indulging or occupied by that which you have. Of course, the higher beings among us are not tempted by our appetites. For example, Hazrat Suleiman, for example, was one of the richest people ever to exist, but his riches and his power did not have an influence upon who he was and upon his spirituality. And indeed, the relationship that we should have with our possessions and with our wealth is one of detachment. This is the type of relationship we should have, a relationship of detachment. In other words, if you lose your great job, or if you lose the capacity to earn, if you lose all your wealth, a pious person will not change. That person will be the same as they were when they had or when they did not have. I remember Ayatollah Jawadi Amoli in Iran made a very interesting comment, which was related to me by one of my teachers who was a student of his, who said that Imam Ali alayhi salam divorced the world 3 times. He said, but we cannot divorce the world 3 times because, first of all, you have to have a relationship with the world. You have to own something to divorce yourself from it. And we did not have all of the opportunities that Imam Ali alayhi salam had. We do not have in our possession one minute portion of what Imam Ali alayhi salam had. And so we cannot divorce the world. But we can have a detached relationship to the world, in the sense that we are in the world, we function according to our responsibilities. You know, we love our children, we love our families and so on, but we love them in the path of Allah, in the way of Allah. And so if we lose those things, we know that these things are not in a competitive relationship in our relationship with Allah. Some people ask, and some people say, for example, how can you love God and love, let's say, your spouse? Or how can you love God and love your children? Well, there are 2 ways of looking at it, because it seems on the surface that they are mutually exclusive, when in fact they are not. And the imagery that is presented from an Islamic philosophical point of view is that our relationship between Allah and things could be either a vertical relationship or a horizontal relationship. Vertical relationship in the sense that your love for those things that deserve your love is in a relationship with our love with Allah. We love Allah through these things, through the mercies and bounties that Allah has given us. We love those things through our love of Allah. So it's like, for example, your parent gives you something a beautiful gift. There are two relationships you have with this gift. One is you like the gift because that person is considerate enough to think of what you need, to think of what you would like to give you that gift. And secondly, that you love that person for giving you that gift. And indeed, the first part is the most important part. It's your parents' love for you that they give you this gift. And if they did not have this love for you, they would not have given you this gift. And they give you this gift as a means of increasing your love for them, as a means of giving gratitude to them for that thing. That's a vertical relationship. The love for that thing is integrally related to the love of the giver of that gift. On the other hand, you could have a horizontal relationship. And in that horizontal relationship, this is where, for example, you would see a competitive relationship between the two items of love. So you get that gift from your parent, but you love that gift on the same sort of level as your parent. You spend more time with the gift, for example, than with your parent. You cannot bear to lose that gift. And if you lose that gift, you lose the love of your parent. This is a horizontal relationship. And so, taqwa is something that we have that brings us close to Allah. Taqwa is a relationship that we would have with our things, that we are in a situation where we are careful that we do not get distracted by that thing to forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is one of the ideas of taqwa. Taqwa requires then what we would call God consciousness. God consciousness, you are conscious of the fact that God is there, that God is looking at you. And so you are careful of your relationship to God. You are careful in your daily lives that you do not infringe upon the rights of God, that you do not lose God's love, you do not lose God's indulgence. So this God consciousness is something that Ramadan brings to us. And it brings it to us on a number of different levels. On the lowest level, it's on the level of law, on the level of fiqh. Many of us, for example, would fast because we are afraid of not fasting. You're afraid of not fasting one day because God says that if you don't fast that day deliberately, you have to pay 60 days of fasting. And this is scary for us. So we are conscious of God's wrath on that particular level. We are conscious of God's wrath on the level of the slave. On the other hand, we could be conscious of God's lack of love for us, or loss of love for us, or loss of indulgence for us when we disobey Him in the month of Ramadan. And these are two different types of fear. One fear is the fear of the slave, the fear of the punishment. The other one is the fear of the lover for the beloved. You see, when you love someone, you do not want to alienate them because that love is valuable to you. That love is one, when you feel it being lost, you feel lost. You feel abandoned. You do not feel happy. Your soul is not restful. And that is the higher type of love. Now, this presence of God and being aware of this presence of God is something that engenders in us what we call sincerity or Ekhlas. Ekhlas or sincerity is when you are doing something according to its value and its worth. You're not doing something out of, how would I say, disassociation. You're not doing that thing out of forgetfulness. You're not doing that thing in a kind of a remote or automatic way. And when we look at how we perform our duties in Islam, especially our ritual duties, we find that many times we do not act in a level of sincerity. And the word ritual is very important because ritual means a prescribed type of action, a certain set of actions that do not change. Every time you do that action, that form of the action remains the same. So for example, when we get up to go to work in the morning, we go through a ritual. We get up in the morning, we do our toiletries, then we get ready for work, then we get in the car, and we drive to work. This is ritual. Now, ritual, you could be conscious of every act of your ritual, or you could be unconscious of it. There are many of us, for example, when you're driving from work, you drive to work, and all of a sudden you're at work. And for some reason, you can't remember the entire route that you took to work because all of this was something that you were doing on a habitual level. This is ritual. So for example, in Islam, we say that when you approach prayer or when you're approaching fasting or whatever wajib deed that we are doing, we should do it with the right niyyah. The niyyah is qurbatan lillah, to be close, to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, this aspect before the prayer is not ritual. Okay, it is something where you should put your conscious mind into it. You know, so it's like getting up in the morning, getting ready to go to work. But this time, you get up in the morning to get ready to go to work, but you are conscious of the fact that you're getting up, you're going into the bathroom, you're going to brush your teeth, you're going to have a shower, and so forth and so on. And at every moment in that habitual action, we are conscious of that action. This is when you have a proper niyyah. However, many of us make that niyyah itself ritual. In other words, we make a niyyah which is supposed to be a thought, which is supposed to be a determination. We make that niyyah itself into an absent-minded ritual. So we say that we want to get close to Allah, but we don't really think it, and we don't really make it a driving force in our action. You know, among the fuqaha, there's debate among the niyyah, about the niyyah. You know, should a niyyah be expressed verbally? Should it be expressed in our mind? Should it not be expressed at all? You know, the mere fact that you make wudu to go to pray means that you have an intention to pray. And they say, well, some say, well, yes, you know, when you about to pray and you know you're going to go and pray, that in itself is a niyyah. I would say that a niyyah is all of these things. A niyyah is all of these things. There's a new term now that has come from Buddhism, actually, a very beautiful term, and it's very interesting it comes from Buddhism, because the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has a hadith that says, seek knowledge even if you have to go to China. And China in the time of the Prophet was a Buddhist country, right? And in those days, you didn't have anything like a secular education. You didn't have, for example, you know, you studied science, you didn't have to study religion. No, they were all one and the same. He said, seek knowledge to go to China. And in this area of mindfulness, it is something that you can see it comes from that particular spirit of the hadith. Not that mindfulness did not exist in Islam, it did. You know, mindfulness, hudurul qalb, presence of the heart, or presence of mind, this is exactly the same thing. However, in that particular culture, that was something that was extremely important in terms of spiritual activity. And what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is, for example, you're sitting here in this room and you are conscious of the fact that you're sitting in this room. You're conscious of the fact of the seat that you're sitting on, how it feels. You're conscious of the room that you are in. You're conscious of the lighting system. You're conscious of the person next to you. You're conscious of your breathing. You're conscious of what you're hearing. You're conscious with your eyes, with your nose, your hands, everything. This is what we call mindfulness. And in our behavior, in our actions, we should be mindful. If we are not mindful, we are not truly sincere. We're not truly sincere. And especially in a repetitive type of behavior like prayer. Because we do it every day in the same way, it becomes to us sometimes as if we are like driving our car to work and we cannot remember how we got there. So we should be paying close attention to this. And this is what gives us the sincerity. And when you have sincerity, sincerity is the background for taqwa. Sincerity is a background for taqwa because you are doing things with a conscious mind. A conscious mind that Allah is there, Allah is witnessing us, and that we want to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now there are two types of sincerity. The first type of sincerity is the sincerity in one's religion and one's worship. Like what I've been talking about in terms of being conscious of what we are doing. The second type of sincerity is having a personality of sincerity, a character of sincerity, where you are sincere in everything you do. That sincerity is one that is rooted in yourself, that cannot be removed. And this is what many of the Urafa would call a maqam, a state of stability where you do not change at all. According to the first type of sincerity, it is reflected in the verse of the Holy Quran where Allah says, وَمَا أُمِرُوا إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. And he says, and they were not commanded except to worship Allah being sincere. مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. That Ekhlas is one where we are consciously practicing our faith in order to get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And how do you do that? You do that with being clear in your intention, with your intention pushing you at every moment of that action. You are also conscious of the goal that you want to achieve. You are conscious of what you want, where you want to get. A person who is conscious of where they want to get, a person who is focused on their goal, would arrive at that goal much faster than a person who is not conscious of the goal. Some people might not know the goal at all. Some people might forget the goal. And in this way, your deeds end up reflecting the type of consciousness of the goal that you have. So you could set off again from work or for work with the intention of going to work and making the best impression, of moving ahead, of accomplishing certain tasks that you put in front of you. And you have that in mind on your way to work. By the time you get to work, you are ready. You know exactly what you are going to do. You are a purposeful type of person. Another person would not start at home, but might start on the job when they enter the job. That person might be effective, but less effective than the person who sets off in that moment, at home for the work. So the knowledge of the goal is extremely important. The other one is the concentration on the action. You are acting in a way that fits in that particular purpose. Your consciousness and your concentration is clear. Your concentration is focused. When you look at most people who are highly achieved, most people who reach their goal, most people who are successful on their job or in their profession or in their career or in their lives, they never lose sight of the goal. And the third and very important component is imagination. You have to be able to imagine that goal. You have to be able to see that goal. If you cannot see that goal in your mind, you can never achieve it. Many great inventors, many great innovators, many great people who have achieved high levels have always imagined where they want to get at. You know, for example, one of the great, when you're running a race, for example, there are some people who aim for the finish line. There are others who aim for past the finish line. You know, the one who aims for past the finish line, that person has more energy and reaches that finish line faster, because the finish line is not the objective. Getting past the finish line is the objective. Give salawat to the Holy Prophet Muhammad and his family. Thank you. I remember an example of the imagination. I remember somebody, and you guys know of Michael Jordan, right? You know Michael Jordan. Somebody asked Michael Jordan, why do you play basketball so well? He said, because when I enter the court, when I enter the basketball court, I say that this court is mine. This is my court. All right? And you can't come on my court and make me look bad. This is his imagination. He didn't own the court. He didn't buy it. Okay? But he convinces himself that this court is his. Right? And you cannot come on this court and make me look bad. Right? And this is why he wins. Right? You know, sometimes your imagination could be a negative one. Okay? You turn your negative into a positive. You know, again, somebody asked Usain Bolt, what motivates you to win a race? Do you aim to win? He says, no, I'm afraid, I'm terrified of losing. I'm terrified of losing. Okay? He sees in his mind himself losing. He can't bear the thought. This is the imagination. We have to imagine the goal. We have to imagine getting close to Allah. When the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, when he says that we are guests at Allah's banquet, this is a topic for the imagination. We have to think of ourselves literally as being at the divine table in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you think of yourself like that, and okay, it's the month of Ramadan, and you're outside on the street, and somebody makes you really upset to make you angry, you ask yourself, wait a minute, I'm a guest here at the banquet of Allah. How would I look? How would I look? You know, being, dishonorable, swearing and cursing and carrying on at this table. How would I look? Could you imagine sitting at a table with a guest, and there's a guest next to you, and he gets you upset, and you turn to him and you start abusing him and so forth and so on? How would the head of the table be looking at you? This is the imagination. He doesn't, Islam, describes for us unseen things in very tangible human ways. In very tangible human ways. Islam says that, every deed that you do, you plant a tree in paradise or you build a house in paradise. And every bad deed that you do, you cut down a tree in paradise in your garden, or you destroy a house in your garden. This is for our imagination. It makes us think of our deeds in a different way. It makes us think of our deeds as something that takes us to a goal that we want. And if those deeds do not take us to this goal, we do not want to have these deeds, even though we might be upset. You might be in the army, for example. You're in the army, and your officer in charge tells you something to do, and you don't want to do it or you don't like doing it. All right? But you know that if you don't do it, if you are insubordinate, there's going to be a great penalty for you. So you do it because you imagine that penalty that you will get. And you know if you do it, you get the approval of your officer in charge. You would get an opportunity for promotion. And you imagine this, so you act in accordance with this. So when we're going through the days in the month of Ramadan, don't just wait for the nights, for us to be reading Quran and, attending majalis and so forth and so on. No, that's one part of it. Think about the course of your day, every moment of your day, as you being at the table, as being Allah's guest, and it will have a tremendous effect upon your behavior. Give salawat to the Holy Prophet Muhammad and his family. So the first phase of Ekhlas is our actions. And then the second phase of sincerity is us being sincere. Ibadallah al-mukhlasin, the mukhlasin. The mukhlasin is a passive term that means people who, or those who are made sincere. You're made sincere. You don't make yourself sincere. We cannot do that. We cannot make our character. We can act sincerely, and we can maintain actions that are sincere by being mindful of our actions. But the stage or the maqam of Ekhlas, being the mukhlas, is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you. So the first phase is when you are mukhlis, when you are acting as a sincere person. This is a behavior that prepares you for getting that state, for Allah giving you that state in order for you to be mukhlas. And Islam operates on this basis. It begins with the outward and moves on the inward. It doesn't often begin with the inward and moves on the outward, because the inward is within the hands of Allah. You see, when we come into this world with all kinds of tendencies, all kinds of orientations, this is the sort of basic ground that we have to work with. So for example, some of us might be short-tempered. Naturally, you might be short-tempered. It's easy to fly off the handle. This is your basic ground. What you do is you become conscious of yourself. You become conscious of that limitation of yourself, that negative aspect of yourself. And then you act contrary to that. And then you continue acting contrary to that. What it does is that Allah Himself gives you that particular quality. And so we are striving to be mukhlas. We are striving to be mukhlas, or to receive that blessing of ikhlas from Allah upon our personality. And we do this by being mukhlis. Allah's sunnah is this. Allah's sunnah is based upon cause and effect. Cause and effect. Now, for cause and effect to take place, you must have the right conditions for that to take place. Okay, so it's not just cause and effect, but cause, effect, and optimal conditions. If you don't have the optimal conditions, the cause and effect cannot take place. And what creates the optimal condition is our behavior. is our behavior. The more we act to create the internal conditions for the effect of Allah being the superior cause for it to take place, the more you will arrive at the destination. It is like rainfall and getting wet, okay? You want to get wet. You want to get wet, let's say. You want to get wet. It's a hot day, you know, and you want to get cooled down or whatever, okay? And you want the rain to fall to get wet, okay? So the rain falling is a cause. Getting wet is the effect. But if you have an umbrella over your head, you can't get wet. The condition does not support the cause effectuating the effect. You have to remove the umbrella in order for the effect to take place. And that removal of the umbrella is what we call the conditions. So our actions are basically a preparation for us to be the spiritual vehicle or container, which is ourselves, our very souls, in order for us to receive the blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it could be tough sometimes, man, I tell you. You know, I'm glad to be here, to tell you the truth, because in London, we're fasting 19 hours a day. And it's really tough, you know, because, you know, you want to, for example, do your Salatul Layl, you know, and you're really, really tired, you see. You don't really have much time to eat suhoor, you know. You want to sleep, you want to rest, you know, you don't have time to rest, you see. It could be tough, you know. So you have to do, you know, little crazy things like, for example, go to sleep right after you have iftar. You know? So you have an hour and a half or something to be able to get up to do what you want to do, you see. So it could be quite tough, but it is also very, very rewarding. The tougher it is, the more rewarding it is, just like in anything else. You know, when you overcome a tough battle, that's when you become a much better person. So we should strive to be sincere in our actions. We should strive to be sincere in our fasting. You know, for a lot of us, you know, the first day of Ramadan is the best day. You know, because that's the first day you have, you know, all of, you know, your hopes and so forth. You're the most pious the first day. By the third day, when it rolls around, what happens? Ramadan becomes ritual. It becomes ritual. Okay? You know, your biggest aim during the day is to get to iftar time. That's your biggest aim, to get to iftar time. So you're not thinking about God. You're thinking about iftar. You're not thinking about the, you know, being the guest at God's banquet. You're thinking being a guest at your banquet in the house. You know, and I'm not talking just about other people. I'm talking about me too. I have to struggle, you know, for that. You know, it's a conscious thing. You know, being mukhlis is a conscious thing. You have to restrain yourself. You see, you have to control yourself. You have to always keep your mind on the goal. Always keep your mind on the goal. And once you keep your mind on the goal, you know, the path towards it might be demanding, okay, but you could look past that and you would be successful. You know, so you find guys, you know, they're running a long race, you know, Mo Farah and these guys, they're running a long race, you know, and I'm sure in the middle of the race, if they're like me, I'm thinking about dropping out. I'm thinking, you know, this is too much, it's not worth it, okay? You know, and these guys fight against themselves, right? They fight against themselves. And they end up at the goal. And when you get to the goal, the happiness is as great as the effort you put into it. You know, so Muhammad Ali, he has a very interesting statement about Ramadan. He says something like, don't count the days, you know, but make the days count. Don't count the days, but make the days count. Don't start counting down, we got, 28 days left, 27 days left, 26 days left, and so on. No, right? You look at that day and say to yourself, am I going to be the best guest at that table? Because a whole lot of people are guests at that table, a whole lot of them. And some of them don't deserve to be there. Some of them, they're short-tempered, they fight each other, they lose their head, they when the sufra opens, they can't contain themselves. They forget that they're in the presence of God and they just attack. You see, this is not the proper way. I see a lot of people doing this. Unfortunately, I see a lot of people doing this, and unfortunately, sometimes when we bring people who are interested in Islam to our general gatherings, or people who just embrace Islam, and they see the I guess we call it savage behavior of Muslims. There's no other way of doing it. They call it savage behavior of Muslims. They get disgusted, right? Because they're not seeing a proper ideal in approach to things. So people distribute the food. There's somebody who wants to take like 3 or 5 packets of the food and put it in their bag. For what? And these types of behavior are taking place, and it's not just among riffraff, It's not just among riffraff. Don't think so. It's among a lot of people who would otherwise have behavior, good respect for, who tend to behave like that. Among the great sages, for example, fasting is not only, or breaking the fast and fasting is not only staying away from doing wrong things. It's not only staying away from doing wrong things, but it is also avoiding falling prey to doing right things. Falling prey to, for example, complete indulgence in the halal. The halal itself could be a distraction to us, you see? And so you have to be very, very careful of that. So without the stamp of sincerity, our characters cannot be fully sincere. We have to become sincere. And it's only when we become sincere is when we are worthy of paradise. And Allah says in the Holy Quran, وَمَا يُؤْمِنُونَ أَكْثَرُهُمْ بِاللَّهِ إِلَّا وَهُمْ مُشْرِكُونَ. And most of them believe not in Allah without associating partners with Him. This is the result of not being sincere. What do you mean by associating partners with Him in this context? There is something called hidden kufr. Hidden kufr. Hidden kufr is when you associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you yourself don't even know that you're doing it. Okay? You yourself don't even know that you're doing it. The Holy Prophet described hidden kufr as like a black ant on a black rock on a dark night. How could you see that? And our hidden kufr, for example, is that outwardly we say we are Muslim, outwardly we say we are doing things fi sabilillah, but inwardly we are doing it for some other purpose. That we hide from our own selves because we ourselves sometimes are embarrassed to admit to ourselves that we are doing this for this reason. So, for example, we are pious to Allah because we want to achieve a particular material goal. That's it. We are pious to Allah because we want to achieve a particular material goal. When we get that goal, we are happy, our piety is maintained. If we don't get that goal, we lose our piety. We give in charity because we want to impress somebody else, but we're not saying that to ourselves. We pray in Jama'ah because we want other people to, respect us, but we're not doing that for Allah, we're doing that for ourselves. So you have to be really careful. I think sometimes, for example, when people call me to lead the prayer, I have to be really, really conscious of what I'm doing. Am I going to pray because in a certain way, because I want the people to think, well, the Sheikh is in the front and he's praying, I know he's the most pious of us? I might not be. Right. Or am I praying to Allah in humility and I want Allah to accept my prayer, in all of my limitations, that I come to Him in my own negative self-consciousness, and I want Him to forgive me and to accept this prayer from me? That might be a better prayer, you see? So you have to be really, really careful of hidden kufr. There's a hadith by the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he says, O Abdullah, O servant of Allah, ahbib fillah, love for the sake of Allah, wa wali fillah, and be friends for the sake of Allah, and hate for the sake of Allah, befriend for the sake of Allah. For Allah's guardianship is attained only by that, only by doing things fi sabilillah, only by doing things that please Allah. And you will not find, he says, the taste of Iman, although your prayers and fasting be much, unless you behave like that. So no matter how much you pray, how much you fast, if you're not doing it with a sincere intention of doing it in the name of Allah, in the path of Allah, for Him to accept you, okay, only then that we will get Iman. You see, so you see the relationship between that and hidden kufr, between the lack of sincerity and hidden kufr. If we lack sincerity in our spiritual practice, our Iman becomes weaker and weaker. Because what is lack of sincerity? Lack of sincerity is called hypocrisy. We tend to think of hypocrisy as something that characterizes somebody else in a very stereotyped way, which is true, but it is not the complete truth. A hypocrite is somebody whose inside is different from their outside. And we accept that a hypocrite knows he's a hypocrite. He's doing something to impress you. He knows that he is not this on the inside. That's one aspect of hypocrisy. But there's a universal aspect of hypocrisy. A universal aspect of hypocrisy. Every single one of us have an aspect of hypocrisy in us. And we have to be able to be aware of this. We have to be able to be aware of this in order to be able to eradicate it. It is part of the human condition. And Allah is all merciful and all indulgent. He is a sabur. And we talk some more about sabr in the coming days. He is sabur because He knows that that we come into this world with these drawbacks. And with these drawbacks, we should be conscious of them and we should be trying to eliminate them. And this is the essence of humility. Humility is realizing that we are not worthy. Humility is realizing that we have limitations in ourselves in coming to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when we do this, Allah changes our situation. Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam said, "Oh Allah, how can I praise you when the very words, the very breath that I use to praise you, I must thank you for? How can I praise you? When I say Alhamdulillah, the very Alhamd that comes out of my mouth is because of the breath that you give me to use this. I should be saying Alhamdulillah for that, and then for that, and then for that. How can I do this?" This is the essence of humility. And so Allah accepts our humble efforts. So let's try to have a good Ramadan. Let's strive to be humble in our consciousness and to be firm in our intention and to try to be sincere by imagining ourselves being at the table of the great King, and inshallah we would be successful. Salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Wa salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله. أزور سيدي ومولاي وذخري وذخيرتي في آخرتي ودنياي أبا عبد الله الحسين، أصالة عن نفسي ونيابة عن والدي ووالدي والدي ومن أوصاني دعاء أو زيارة. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله. السلام عليك وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعلهما الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أنصار الحسين وعلى أبي الفضل العباس وأختهما زينب، ورحمة الله وبركاته. والفاتحة تسبقها صلوات.